welcome back to Couch Critic. Dennis P. still sat here on my couch using Chelsea Football Club. Now before I get into that Newcastle review, could you please do me a big favor and hit that like button, that subscribe button, and if you're a real bad man, you will hit that bell notification button to keep up with the latest and the newest. Okay, let's get right into it. Chelsea versus Newcastle up at Stamford Bridge, a game that finished 2-1 to the Chelsea with goal scorers Willian and Pedro and Kieran Clark with the Newcastle marker. Now, there are many tactical talking points that I can draw from this match. I'm going to start with Chelsea's use of the false nine against Newcastle's back five. I thought that Eden Hazard had a quiet game, didn't really assert himself in all areas of the pitch. And that was mainly due to the fact that there was very little space for him to run into in between the midfield and the defense. Now, for this reason, I thought Chelsea could have used Giroud in the match, mainly for the point of reference and the ability to allow Hazard to basically dovetail off of the focal point, which would have been Giroud, and basically stitch through attacking moves from there. And while I do recognize some of the off-ball movement was brilliant, I think that the recognition of the off-ball movement was poor, and that was mainly down to the fact that we didn't have our best thinkers on the ball a lot of the times. We had guys that like Alonso or Azpilicueta who weren't necessarily seeing the same game as, say, somebody like Willian was today, who I thought was fantastic. Our best player, I would say, recognizing runs and making that incisive pass today was by far David Luiz. And for that reason, he got my man of the match. From an opposition's perspective, I don't think that Newcastle did a lot to actually impact the game. A lot of the errors that we were making were down to individual errors more so than what they did to force those errors. And a lot of those individual errors were down to Rudiger, who I thought had a poor game. Not only his distribution, but also his positioning on the pitch. Probably the worst game I've seen from Rudiger in quite some time. Got us into trouble on a few of those occasions. Jose Perez was played in by Rondon and probably should have at least tested the keeper, didn't. And there was another chance where Rondon gone in and probably should have tested the keeper and didn't. They were basically both down to Rudiger not really reading the play well enough. And it's funny too, because if that were David Luiz that made those errors, we wouldn't hear the end of it. I think mainly just the fact that Rudiger is the guy that everyone's clinging their hopes to as being the next big center back at Chelsea. They are reluctant to really, study his game and see the errors that exist there as well. David Luiz covered up for so many errors by both Rudiger and Alonso on that flank. And it went unnoticed, really. Like, everyone noticed his ball, his long ball distribution and whatnot, but his defensive play in that game was impeccable. Had a rough go with Rondon in the air, but outside of that, like everything else, reading the game and like snuffing out attacking moves, I thought he was brilliant. Now, the idea when you're playing in a false nine system is to use your movement and interplay to pull defenders out of position and force them to engage in the half spaces. I thought Chelsea did a poor job of doing that against Newcastle, mainly because they weren't making that incisive pass into Hazard and trusting that he could actually either hold up the ball or get on the half turn and get in behind the defense. I thought a lot of the time what Chelsea were doing was, instead of making that incisive pass and trusting that somebody like Hazard can hold up the ball and maybe even get on the half turn and get in behind the defense, they were very hesitant on playing that ball into him, and as a result, it just kept on getting recycled in and amongst the defenders. The players that had the most touches in the game today were Jorginho, Rudiger, and Luis, and that's indicative of the fact that Chelsea are just not pushing the ball up the pitch. The few times our ball handlers did recognize Hazard's positioning and did give him the ball, he was able to get on the half turn and affect the game in a meaningful way. The goal that he set up for Willian was a result of him getting on the half turn and getting right into the teeth of the defense. And this is when Chelsea should be the most dangerous in the false nine role, when they have Hazard running at the defense and he has Willian on one flank, Pedro at the other, and maybe even someone like Conte coming in to fill in. Chelsea have to be brave enough, and in particular guys like Jorginho, Azpilicueta, Alonso, Kovacic, they have to be brave enough to play the ball into Hazard on those half spaces and allow him to get on the ball to affect the game. If he's going to play the false nine role and only get like 30 touches a game, it's to no advantage for Chelsea at this point. He's not a very good decoy because he doesn't really make a whole lot of runs off the ball. His ability to get on the ball, shield it, and then lay it off to somebody, or even to take on a defender and get in on goal is what's going to make this system a lot more dangerous than it looks right now. Now, all over social media and in the media in general, we're seeing all sorts of like people calling for Jorginho's head and asking what he's actually doing in this system and why he's playing in the role that he is, whether or not he's actually been effective in it. He's made 2,000 passes and hasn't recorded one assist. So a lot of people are wondering what is the role of the regista. Now for me, the regista role is simple. He's the guy that sits at the fulcrum of the team. He's the guy that establishes a tempo and the rhythm that the team wants to play at. Now Jorginho's not going to get you a ton of goals and a ton of assists. What he will do is provide you with what I call the hockey assist, which is the ball that leads to the ball that leads to the goal. He's not the guy that's going to be the final ball. I'd like to see more of that myself. I think in the final third, what I'd like to see, and I'm sure what many of you would like to see, is him making that incisive pass in the final third to get us in on goal as well. I think that action in his game is what's missing right now. We need to see more of an incisive, like, line-breaking pass from him. One indictment that I do have for Jorginho right now is not getting the team to play at the right sort of tempo and pace in order to affect games. That may just be down to fatigue. He doesn't have a natural replacement. We just said goodbye to Cesc Fabregas. His first time in England, where the tempo is a lot faster and the games come thick and fast. Jorginho is struggling with dealing with the pace and power of the Premier League right now. But having said that, I still think Jorginho needs to be more of a deep-lying playmaker for us in this system. We can't really rely on Conte. We aren't really relying on Kovacic, and a lot of the creative burden is falling onto Hazard, Pedro, and Willian. It's just not good enough. We can't depend on Alonso or Azpilicueta to create for us, so a lot of the burden is going to be shifted onto Jorginho. He hasn't really done a good job at delivering that final ball for us in order for us to create goal-scoring opportunities. But for my money, the reason why the system is struggling and sputtering right now is because we're playing with fullbacks that aren't really comfortable in possession. Now in Alonso, you have a guy that has useful traits in this system. He's great in the air, good stature, he's a good striker of the ball, and he's also a great header of the ball as well. But in terms of the overall application of the system, he's not the ideal fit. He's not very good in possession. He doesn't really possess the kind of pace that you need to be up and down the pitch. His awareness is just poor. Remember, Chelsea are going to be in possession of the ball in most games, 60-70% of the time. You need somebody that is good, comfortable in possession and able to play passes and work that flank. Alonso just does not possess that. He gives away the ball quite a bit, and he doesn't necessarily know how to put in that telling cross that's going to be, you know, that cutback, get to the byline and cut it back to somebody to just strike the ball. That coupled with the fact that when our left winger, who's usually Hazard or Willian for that matter, love to cut inside, we lack width on that left flank now. On the right side, we have Azpilicueta, who is very comfortable in the defensive phases of the game and almost thinks the game that way more often than not. And it's to his detriment when we're in possession of the ball 67% of the time, like I said before. He doesn't really have an attacker's mentality. He's more of a defensive-minded player. So when we're looking for that incisive pass, or we're looking for somebody to just bomb down the flank and put in that cross, he's not necessarily that guy. He's the guy that's going to be playing the more safe pass, the lower risk pass in those situations. As a result, we don't really make any sort of like incisions on that right flank unless it's being made by the right winger, who usually, again, is Pedro, or we've been seeing Show the last little while, get down and make some sort of like incisive move. So for Azpilicueta, I think he's capable and whatnot. I just think his mentality is not right for this type of football that we're trying to play. He's very astute defensively, and that always comes to the fore first and foremost. He never gets to the byline. He never tries to beat his man. He never tries to take anybody on. If anything, he'll hit an early cross, so he's still in position to be in the defensive phase of the game if something, if there's a turnover or, there's a counter. And while I do agree that tactically we can improve and evolve quite a bit, I'm very reluctant to, buy into the idea that Sarri needs to adjust his tactics for certain games. I think that we're in the very early stages of a beautiful thing. And a lot of what we're seeing right now, a lot of the problems that we're seeing is the fact that we have a mismatched squad, not the system itself. We don't have the players to play his system. And when we do get those players, we're going to see a completely different brand of football at Chelsea. The reasons why I don't want to see him adjust his tactic is mainly because I want it to be part of the philosophy of the club going forward. They recognize what it is that is needed for the system to come off, and they buy the players to fit the system. If we keep juggling one system to the next, to the next, to the next, kind of get a convoluted look of what it is. Now we have a Chelsea team that is assembled from Antonio Conte's Chelsea and Jose Mourinho's Chelsea with sprinkles of what Sarri has. Until we get the majority of the players that understand Sarri's philosophy on the team, then we're not going to see that style of football that we want to see. Free-flowing, possession-based attacking football. But I think I'm going to wrap it up there. Chelsea emerged 2-1 winners at the Bridge with Pedro and Willian providing the bullets. It wasn't the greatest game, and it definitely has cause for concern. We aren't seeing the true application of Sarri's system quite yet. We're still struggling to find, the passes into the half space like I mentioned earlier, and also just the confidence to get down the flank. I don't think we have quite assembled a team to play the system yet, and I think that over time we're going to see market changes. Who knows, where the window's open right now. There's still opportunities to get that striker in. We need to find some goals, no doubt about it. If we don't, I don't think we're going to make top 4. We do need to replace Cesc Fabregas, who I did say earlier went to Monaco, and there's lots of talk of Paredes coming in, or maybe even Barella, both of which I would love to see at the club for different reasons. I think Paredes has the passing ability that we need, that plan B, that guy that can just like play that ball over the top, and you know, there's a variety of passes. Like I've watched some of his YouTube footage, and like some of the passes that he's able to make, you know, are different to what we have at the club right now. Whereas Barella seems to have a little bit more bite to him. Seems like he has a little bit more leadership qualities on the pitch as well. A guy that you can depend on and has a tenacity to deliver. But outside of that, we just got to keep working with what we have, and that means playing Hazard at the striker role, and that's what we got to do to win games. I'm hoping we can bring in a striker. I don't know who it is. Maybe Higuain might come in. We're gonna need, you know, a squad, a full squad first of all, and also a squad of players that understand the system. Bringing in guys, you know, from the cold may not be the right time for that right now, but we definitely need, you know, guys that understand the system and are able to apply it at a high level. If you haven't already, do me a favor, hit that like button, that subscribe button, and that bell notification to keep up with the latest and the newest. I'm gonna wrap it up there, and until then, let's hope we can get some more goals, find some goals in the transfer window. But until then, you know, keep the blue flag flying high and up the Chelsea.